Hi guys, it's ASBYT and this is the Xiaomi Mi 10 5G. And this represents the latest flagship smartphone series from Xiaomi this year. They launched it back in February in China some 4 months ago, and there was a fair amount of hype back then. But fast forward to now, how does this phone actually stack up and who is it actually really for? Xiaomi kindly offered to sponsor this video, but of course all views are my own. Now the Mi series tends to be very popular amongst Xiaomi fans because it represents the very best from Xiaomi of that calendar year, but crucially it keeps the price down compared to other high-end flagship phones, also under that £1,000 mark that haunts a lot of other manufacturers. So what are the 5 main ways to tell that this is their flagship smartphone series this year? The Snapdragon 865 chip, Wi-Fi 6 and 5G connectivity, a large 4780 mAh battery cell, impressive camera setup, and a rather sexy design. Speaking of design, it's pretty nice and clean, both on the front with its edge-to-edge immersive display and on the rear with the camera setup in a nice clean line at the top left. I personally prefer the clean line camera setups than the more squarer or circular arrays that are out there. But let me know in the comments what you think. Speaking of that rear camera array, the Mi 10 is capable of shooting video in 720, 1080, 4K and a ridiculous 8K. The stabilization at 8K is not great, but the autofocus is really pretty impressive. You are limited to 24 and 30 frames per second at this resolution, but if you did need to go to 60 frames, for example, that is an option at 1080 and 4K. I wish Xiaomi and other smartphone manufacturers offered 24 frames per second on more resolutions to get that kind of cinematic look if you wanted it, but it's certainly not a deal breaker. The video stabilization could again definitely be improved at 4K 60, but it is very good at 4K 30. And the audio packs a punch also. Voice seems clear and fairly loud, although if you are recording in loud settings, the background noise can sometimes be a bit off-putting. As well as the primary lens, you can also record video using the wide-angle lens and when zoomed in also. More on how those perform for photos in a second. The only real negative I see from a video point of view is the fact that you are limited to 1080p on the front-facing camera, so no 4K and no 60 frames a second either, so for content creators, for example, that may be an issue for you, but for the general public, it should be fine. If we move to photography, again we have a standout feature. The 108 megapixel wide-angle lens, which when selected, gives you fantastic detail, noticeable especially when you crop in. The phone also doesn't seem to suffer from the same slow processing speed of the Mi Note 10 from late last year when using that 108 megapixel sensor. So a big thumbs up Xiaomi for that. Now unfortunately there isn't a telephoto lens on board, but you do have a 2 megapixel macro lens which does a really pretty decent job, I must say, regardless of how often I would personally use it, which is probably not a lot. One lens I do like using on smartphones is of course an ultra wide, and the Mi 10 has a 30 megapixel sensor with an 117 degree field of view. Not the widest on the market, but photos do come out looking fairly sharp with good dynamic range, something that runs right through to the primary lens also. You can see examples of this in the bright sky areas, which don't tend to overexpose or become blown out like some competitors do. Rear portrait shots and selfies from the front 20 megapixel sensor are colour accurate and true to life, with not a crazy amount of saturation. Now in my opinion, on future products Xiaomi could improve edge detection and depth sensing capabilities, as sometimes items in the foreground can appear blurred when they should be in focus, etc. One pretty cool feature here though is you can actually alter real time the f-stop, changing the amount of blur you get in the background. Again, this is software based though, so you can sometimes run into problems around the edges. Low light shots appear natural with good detail, although really low light shots often turn out looking a little bit on the dark side. The front camera doesn't have a dedicated night mode and results are okay, but in really low light it will struggle because of it. So moving on to that 6.67 inch full HD plus curved AMOLED display. It's super bright and vibrant with good colour reproduction, and it has a 90Hz refresh rate. Now yes, the growing trend in 2020 is for refresh rates of 120, even 144 Hz to some extent, but as I've said time and time again, the jump between 60 Hz, which we were used to over the last few years, to 90 felt like a big jump, whereas from 90 to 120 can tell when they're side by side, but it's not as drastic. And this certainly does feel nice and smooth when scrolling, browsing the internet and gaming. Also, 90Hz strikes a happy medium between great smooth performance and also improved battery life, as of course the higher the refresh rate, the more zapping it is on the system. And speaking of battery, in the time that I've been using this phone, the 4780 mAh cell has pretty much got me, give or take a few minutes here or there, around 9 hours of screen on time, which is just incredible. On top of that, the 30 watts fast charging and, get this, 30 watts fast wireless charging has meant I've been able to fully charge this phone in about 1 hour. So this battery and display combo, as well as the liquid cooling system, have meant long periods watching movies and gaming have been a breeze. And it also has stereo speakers, which aids this also, but they're not ideal at the same time. Sound quality is very high, clear vocals and minimal distortion. However, if you are someone who likes to game a lot, when you hold the phone in the natural gaming position, because the speakers fire outwards top and bottom and not forwards, they are easy to cover when gripping the phone. So it's great for blocking sound if your phone goes off unexpectedly and you're like, oh, turn that down. But yeah, some people may prefer front-facing ones. The software is Android 10 with Xiaomi's MIUI 11 skin over the top, which doesn't feel like stock Android for sure, but there is a growing feeling that it's moving closer over the last few years while still maintaining some of the quirks that Xiaomi fans have always loved. And regardless of what your tipple is software-wise in terms of looks, it's very hard to deny Xiaomi's MIUI is always one of the fastest and most fluid available. And now they've added that higher refresh rate display, it's just a joy to use. So we're on to price. How much does this thing actually cost? And this is an area that I'm a bit torn. On one hand, the $799 UK Buy It Now price is cheaper than some of its competitors available, but it's still not cheap. If it was priced, say, at $599 or even $699, I would say absolutely go and get it. It's a really, really top phone. But at $799, even though I still can recommend it, it's still, I think, worth that amount of money. There's just a lot more competition in that price bracket on the market. There's also a Pro model of this phone showcased on the Xiaomi website with an enhanced camera setup and 50 watts fast charging, but no Buy It Now options available in the UK at this time. So to answer the original question, how does the Xiaomi Mi 10 stack up now, 4 months down the line? And the answer is pretty well. Other phones have been released since, which are similar in quality at this price point, but it certainly still holds its own. If you're someone who wants every single feature possible and are willing to pay a lot of money for that, then this might not be the best option for you. But if you want a phone at a reasonable price and with the majority of features available in a great package, then it's definitely one to consider. Love to know what you think of the Xiaomi Mi 10 in the comment section below. Like and share the video if you enjoyed it and found it helpful. Subscribe if you're new to the channel and love everything tech, breaking tech news, unboxings, reviews. I love you and leave you. I'll see you in the next one. So ASBYT, peace out.